Commander Zara Chen stared at the view screen of her ship, the Prometheus. Stars filled the dark space around them, but something felt wrong. The ship had just finished its first jump using the new faster-than-light drive. They were supposed to be near Alpha Centauri. But the readings made no sense. "Captain, we have a problem," said Lieutenant Torres from his position at the sensor station. His voice was tight with worry. "There are ships out there. Big ones." Zara moved closer to look at the screen. 3 massive vessels hung in space ahead of them. They looked nothing like any human ship she had ever seen. The hulls were dark and covered with sharp edges that caught the starlight. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the Prometheus. "Are they scanning us?" Zara asked. "Yes, ma'am, but something strange is happening. Their scans are bouncing off us in ways that don't make sense. It's like our ship is giving off some kind of energy field that their equipment can't read properly." Before Zara could respond, lights began flashing on the communication panel. A voice came through the speakers, but it wasn't human. The sounds were harsh and clicking, like someone trying to speak with a mouth full of rocks. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or be destroyed." Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's language expert, worked quickly at her station. "I'm running the speech through our translation programs, but I've never heard anything like this before." Zara took a deep breath. This was first contact with an alien species, something humans had dreamed about for hundreds of years. But it wasn't going the way anyone had expected. "This is Commander Zara Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We come in peace. We were exploring this system and mean no harm." There was a long pause. Then the alien voice returned. But this time, it sounded confused and even a little frightened. "Did you say Earth? That is impossible. Earth is a myth. A dead world in quarantine." Zara looked at her crew. They all wore the same confused expression she felt on her face. "Quarantine? I don't understand. Earth is very much alive. We come from there." Another pause. This one, even longer. When the voice came back, it was speaking to someone else in the background. The translation program was having trouble keeping up, but Zara could make out fragments. "Impossible readings, energy levels off the charts. Call the council immediately." Finally, the alien spoke to them again. "You will follow us to Station Nexus Prime. Any attempt to resist or escape will result in your destruction. Stay in formation." One of the alien ships moved closer, and for the first time, Zara could see it clearly. The hull was covered in what looked like scales, and there were weapon ports that glowed with a dangerous red light. Through the ship's windows, she could see figures moving around inside. "Captain," whispered Dr. Kim, "look at this." She had been working on the translation of the background conversations. Words appeared on her screen. "Quarantine field failing. Energy readings impossible. Humans should not exist. Call the architect's protocols." Quote. "What do you think they mean by quarantine?" asked Lieutenant Torres. Zara shook her head. "I have no idea, but we're going to find out." The journey to the alien station took 6 hours. During that time, the alien ships kept scanning the Prometheus. Each time they did, the readings became more confused. The aliens were clearly talking to each other, and their voices grew more worried with each passing hour. "Captain," said Dr. Kim, "I think I understand part of what's happening. From what I can translate, they seem to think our ship gives off some kind of energy that their instruments can't measure. They keep saying our neural patterns are impossible." "Neural patterns? I think they're scanning our brains. But for some reason, their equipment can't make sense of how human minds work." When Station Nexus Prime came into view, Zara felt her breath catch. The station was enormous, easily the size of a small city. It was shaped like a giant wheel, slowly spinning in space. Ships of dozens of different designs were docked at various points around its edge. As the Prometheus was guided to a docking port, Zara could see other aliens through the station's windows. Some looked like the scaled creatures that had captured them, but others were completely different. There were beings that seemed to be made of light, others that looked like machines, and some that appeared to be floating in tanks of liquid. "Ma'am," said Torres, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sensor readings are going crazy again. It's like the whole station is trying to scan us. But their equipment keeps overloading." The alien captain's voice came through the speakers one more time. "Humans of the vessel Prometheus, you will be brought before the Galactic Council. Do not resist. Your very existence threatens the stability of our galaxy." Zara looked at her crew of 12. They were all good people, scientists and explorers who had volunteered for humanity's first mission to the stars. None of them looked like they could threaten anyone, let alone an entire galaxy. "Prepare for docking," she ordered. "And remember, we represent all of humanity now. Whatever happens, we stay calm, and we stay together." As the docking clamps locked onto their ship, Zara wondered what she had gotten her crew into. Earth had always seemed like just another planet in a vast universe. But apparently, to the aliens, humans were something much more dangerous. Through the docking port, she could see figures in environmental suits waiting for them. Some carried what were clearly weapons. Others held devices that beeped and flashed as they pointed them toward the human ship. The alien captain spoke one final time. "Welcome to Galactic Society. Humans. Pray that your species proves less destructive than our legends suggest." Zara straightened her uniform and prepared to step into a larger universe than humanity had ever imagined. Behind her, the crew of the Prometheus followed, unaware that their simple arrival had begun to unravel secrets that had been hidden for 50,000 years. The council chamber was the largest room Zara had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into shadows, and the walls curved away in all directions. Hundreds of beings from dozens of different species sat in rows that rose up like a giant amphitheater. Zara and her crew stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of light. She tried not to stare at the aliens around them, but it was impossible not to look. Some had scales like the creatures who had captured them. Others glowed with their own inner light, floating in the air without any visible support. A few looked like they were made of metal and circuits, with glowing eyes that never blinked. At the front of the chamber sat 5 figures that were clearly the most important. Each one represented a different type of alien species. The one in the center spoke first, its voice echoing through the vast space. "I am High Counselor Thane of the Korthak Empire," said the scaled creature who had brought them here. "These humans claim to come from the forbidden world of Sol 3. Before we decide their fate, the Council must know the truth of what we face." To his left, a being made of pure light began to speak. Its voice sounded like music mixed with wind chimes. "I am Counselor Cythera of the Ethereal Collective. The legends speak of Sol 3, but we believe them to be myths. Perhaps it is time to share the true history." Zara watched as the aliens began to tell a story that changed everything she thought she knew about Earth and humanity. Long ago, there had been a race called the Architects. They were ancient beyond measure, having explored the galaxy when most other species were still learning to use fire. The Architects had discovered something that frightened them more than any enemy they had ever faced. On a small blue planet in a distant star system, a young species was developing abilities that defied the laws of nature as the Architects understood them. These creatures, who called themselves humans, possessed minds that could touch the very fabric of reality itself. "The Architects found that human consciousness operates on quantum levels," explained another council member, "a machine being with a voice like grinding gears. Your thoughts can influence matter and energy in ways that should be impossible. You can bend space and time without technology." Zara felt her head spinning. "That's impossible. Humans are just people. We can't do any of those things." "Not yet," said Cythera. "But the Architects saw your potential. They watched your species for 1,000 years, and grew more afraid with each generation. Early humans showed signs of abilities that could reshape worlds with pure thought. The Council showed holographic images in the air above them. Zara saw what looked like ancient Earth. But it was different. Humans in the images seemed to glow with inner light. They moved through the air without machines and changed the landscape around them with gestures of their hands. The Architects decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to develop naturally," continued Thane. "But they also believed that destroying your world would be wrong. So they created the greatest technological achievement in galactic history. The quarantine shroud, whispered Sci-Fi. A field that surrounded your entire star system, hiding it from the rest of the galaxy. But more than that, it dampened your species' natural abilities, keeping them sleeping until you were mature enough to handle such power responsibly. Zara looked at her crew. They all appeared as shocked as she felt. Dr. Kim stepped forward. You're saying that humans have psychic powers, but something has been keeping them turned off? In simple terms, yes, said the machine being. The field has been failing for the past 100 years. This is why your technology advanced so rapidly in recent centuries. Your minds were beginning to wake up, pushing you toward the stars. But why are you all so afraid of us? Asked Lieutenant Torres. The council members looked at each other nervously. Finally, Thane spoke. Because the legends say that when the humans awaken fully, they will either become the galaxy's greatest protectors or its ultimate destroyers. The choice will be yours. Sci-Fi floated closer to them. Your minds are already affecting our technology. Our sensors cannot read you properly because your consciousness exists on levels we cannot measure. You emit energy signatures that overload our most advanced equipment. What happened to the architects? Zara asked. They vanished 3,000 years ago, said Thane. Some believe they transcended physical existence. Others think they traveled to distant galaxies, but before they left, they gave the council instructions on what to do if the quarantine shroud ever failed. Which is, the chamber fell silent. The tension was so thick that Zara could feel it pressing against her skin. Finally, Sci-Fi spoke in a voice heavy with sadness. If humanity could not be controlled or contained, we were ordered to destroy Earth before your species could spread beyond your home system. Zara felt her blood turn cold. You're planning to destroy our entire planet? The vote has not been taken yet, said another council member, this one looking like a being made of crystalline energy. Some of us believe the architects were wrong to fear humanity. Others think the risk is too great. But the quarantine shroud is completely gone now, said Thane. Your ship's arrival confirms it. Which means that humans on Earth are probably already beginning to show their true abilities. As if summoned by his words, a new alien entered the chamber. It moved quickly to Thane's side and whispered something in his ear. Thane's scaled face grew dark with worry. What is it? Demanded Sci-Fi. Reports are coming in from observation posts near your solar system, Thane said, looking directly at Zara. Strange energy readings around Earth. Space itself appears to be changing. Dr. Kim grabbed Zara's arm. Captain, if what they're saying is true, then people back home might be developing abilities they don't understand. Without any guidance or training, Zara thought about Earth, about the billions of people going about their normal lives, completely unaware that they might soon develop powers that could reshape reality. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. How long do we have before the council votes? She asked. The fleet is already being prepared, said Thane. We will reach Earth in 72 hours. By then, the council will have decided whether humanity lives or dies. Sci-Fi looked at Zara with something that might have been sympathy. Use your time wisely, human. If your species is to survive, you must prove that Earth deserves to exist among the stars. As guards escorted them from the chamber, Zara realized that the future of humanity now rested on her shoulders and those of her small crew. Somehow, they had to convince an entire galaxy that humans could be trusted with powers that even the ancient architects had feared. Behind them, the council began to argue in a dozen different languages, their voices echoing through the vast chamber like the sounds of an approaching storm. Zara sat in a small room aboard the station, waiting for what the aliens called a diplomatic evaluation. The walls were smooth and white, with no decoration except a single window that looked out at the stars. She could see Earth's sun in the distance, a tiny yellow dot that seemed impossibly far away. The door opened without sound, and Counselor Sci-Fi floated into the room. Up close, the ethereal was even more strange and beautiful than Zara had first thought. Sci-Fi's body seemed to be made of shifting light, constantly changing colors like an aurora. "Commander Chen," said Scythara, settling into the air across from Zara's chair. "I must apologize for what I am about to do. But the Council needs to understand what we are dealing with." "What do you mean?" "I am going to scan your mind. Most species experience this as slightly uncomfortable, but not painful. I need to see how human consciousness actually works." Zara felt nervous but tried not to show it. "Will it hurt?" "It should not. I will be gentle." Scythara's form began to glow brighter, and Zara felt a strange tingling sensation in her head. It was like having someone very gently touch the inside of her skull. At first, it was just strange, not unpleasant. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of Scythara reading Zara's thoughts, Zara suddenly found herself experiencing Scythara's consciousness. She could feel the ethereal surprise and confusion as their minds touched in ways that weren't supposed to be possible. Zara saw flashes of images that weren't her own memories. Ancient worlds where beings of light danced between the stars. Cities made of pure thought floating in space, and somewhere in the background, a vast network of consciousness that connected every ethereal in their species. But there was more. Through Scythara's mind, Zara began to see things that had been hidden from her all her life. She saw Earth as it really was, not just a planet but a sleeping giant of potential energy. She saw the invisible field that had surrounded their solar system for thousands of years, finally breaking apart like old chains. Most shocking of all, she saw herself and all of humanity as they truly existed. Every human mind was connected to something vast and deep, like individual drops of water that were part of an infinite ocean. The ocean was made of possibility itself, of the power to change reality through will and imagination. "This is impossible," whispered Scythara, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. Zara watched as scenes played out in her mind, showing her Earth's hidden history. She saw early humans who could speak to animals and plants, making the Earth bloom with abundance. She saw others who could heal any injury with their touch, or who could travel between distant places by thinking about them. She saw the day the architects arrived, and felt their fear when they realized what humanity could become. The quarantine field they built didn't just hide Earth. It created a kind of spiritual sleep that kept human abilities turned off. But now, the field was breaking, and people all over Earth were beginning to wake up. The vision shifted, and Zara found herself seeing Earth in real time. In a small apartment in Tokyo, a 6-year-old girl named Yuki was crying because she had dropped her favorite toy. As her tears fell, she reached toward the toy, wishing she could have it back. The toy began to glow softly and floated through the air into her hands. In Kansas, a farmer named Tom was worried about his dying crops. The drought had lasted too long, and his family was facing ruin. As he walked through his fields in despair, his emotions somehow reached into the soil. Underground water began to move, flowing toward the roots of his plants. Within minutes, his entire farm was blooming with new growth. In Mumbai, Dr. Priya Sharma was working late in her laboratory, trying to solve a complex problem that had puzzled scientists for years. As she stared at the equations on her whiteboard, something clicked in her mind. But it wasn't just understanding. The numbers themselves began to rearrange on the board, showing her the answer in burning letters of light. All around Earth, similar awakenings were happening. A street musician in Sao Paulo discovered that his guitar could create music that healed people's sadness. A teacher in London found that she could help her students learn by sharing knowledge directly from her mind to theirs. An engineer in Seoul realized he could fix broken machines just by touching them and understanding how they wanted to work. "Stop," gasped Scythara, breaking the connection. "I cannot. This is beyond anything we imagined." Zara blinked, finding herself back in the small white room. But she still felt the echo of everything she had seen. "What just happened to me?" Scythara's light was flickering like a candle in the wind. "You were supposed to be passive during the scan. Instead, you pulled me into your consciousness. I experienced what it feels like to be human, and it was." She paused, searching for words. It was like swimming in an ocean of infinite possibility. Are those visions real? Are people on Earth really developing powers? Yes, the quarantine field's collapse is accelerating. Your species is awakening faster than the architects predicted. Sci-Fi moved closer. Commander, do you understand what this means? In a matter of days, possibly hours, humans will begin manifesting abilities that could reshape worlds. Zara felt a chill of fear mixed with excitement. Will they know how to control these powers? That is the question the Council is debating right now. Uncontrolled psychic abilities on a planetary scale could be catastrophic. But, Sci-Fi hesitated, what I experienced in your mind suggests that humans have something we never considered. What? Wisdom. Compassion. The humans in your visions weren't using their powers for destruction or conquest. They were trying to help, to heal, to create. Even when they were afraid or confused, their first instinct was to make things better. Before Zara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and she could hear voices shouting in various alien languages. What's happening? Sci-Fi's form brightened with alarm. Emergency session. Something has happened near Earth. She paused, listening to voices that Zara couldn't hear. The Korthak fleet has been dispatched. They're moving toward your solar system now. Zara stood up quickly. How long do we have? At their current speed, 18 hours. I need to contact my crew. If Earth is really awakening, then my people need to know what's coming. Sci-Fi nodded. I will help you. But Commander, you must understand. There are factions in the Council who believe that humanity is too dangerous to exist. They see your awakening as a threat that must be eliminated before it spreads. And what do you believe? Sci-Fi was quiet for a long moment. I believe that in 50,000 years of galactic civilization, we have never encountered a species with your potential for both creation and compassion. If humanity can learn to control these abilities, then what? Then you might be exactly what this galaxy has been waiting for. As they hurried through the corridors of the station, Zara felt the weight of her species' future pressing down on her. Somewhere behind them, the Galactic Council was deciding whether humanity deserved to live, and somewhere ahead, Earth was awakening to powers beyond imagination. The next 18 hours would determine whether humanity's first contact with the galaxy would be its last. The Korthak war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a pack of metal wolves. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the blue-green world that hung in space ahead of them. According to the ancient protocols, this planet was supposed to be destroyed before its inhabitants could spread their dangerous abilities to other worlds. Admiral, reported his weapons officer. Long-range scans are detecting massive energy fluctuations across the planet's surface. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. Show me. The main screen filled with images of Earth. But instead of a normal planet, they saw a world that seemed to be glowing with soft, shifting lights. The lights pulsed like a heartbeat, creating patterns that moved across continents like waves. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Okafor stood in her laboratory at MIT, watching news reports that were becoming more impossible by the hour. Around the world, people were discovering abilities that shouldn't exist. The internet was flooding with videos of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Sarah's phone rang. It was her colleague, Dr. James Wright, calling from CERN in Switzerland. Sarah, you need to see this. The quantum field readings we're getting are off the charts. It's like reality itself is becoming more flexible. I'm seeing the same thing here. Sarah replied. James, I think our consciousness is actually changing the laws of physics around us. As she spoke, Sarah looked at her computer screen and realized she understood the data in a way she never had before. The numbers weren't just information, they were living patterns that she could feel and touch with her mind. Without thinking, she reached out mentally and began to reorganize the equations, solving problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. Across the planet, similar awakenings were happening faster and faster. In hospitals, doctors were discovering they could heal patients by simply wanting them to be well. In schools, teachers found they could share knowledge directly from their minds to their students. Engineers were fixing complex machines by understanding how the machines wanted to work, but not everyone was handling the changes well. In some places, Fear was spreading as fast as the abilities themselves. Governments were trying to understand what was happening, but their instruments couldn't measure what they were seeing. High above Earth, Admiral Vextar prepared to give the order to begin the bombardment. All ships, prepare to fire. Target major population centers. We must prevent this awakening from spreading beyond this system. But as the Korthak ships powered up their weapons, something unexpected happened. The space around Earth began to change. Lieutenant Torres, aboard the Prometheus, which had been following the fleet at a safe distance, watched his instruments in amazement. Captain Chen, you need to see this. The quantum field around Earth is shifting. It's like the planet is protecting itself. Zara, who had managed to convince Scythara to help her follow the fleet, stared at the readings in disbelief. The people down there don't even know they're in danger, but they're unconsciously defending their world. On Earth, Sarah Okafor felt a sudden chill, as if something terrible was approaching. Without understanding why, she reached out with her newly awakened abilities, trying to sense what was wrong. To her amazement, she found her mind touching other human minds around the world. Millions of people were experiencing the same feeling. Something threatened their home, and instinctively, they began to respond. When Admiral Vextar gave the order to fire, the Korthak weapons discharged properly. Massive energy beams lanced toward Earth with enough power to shatter continents. But, as the beams traveled through the space around the planet, they began to change. The energy weapons, designed to destroy, were transformed by the collective unconscious will of humanity. The destructive force became harmless light that painted beautiful colors across Earth's sky. Instead of death, the Korthak attack created the most spectacular aurora ever seen. What happened? Demanded Vextar. Why didn't our weapons work? His science officer, a nervous young Korthak named Zith, studied his instruments with confusion. Sir, the energy from our weapons was converted into photons. Somehow, the space around the planet changed the nature of our attack. That's impossible, Admiral, interrupted the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's in our language. Put it through. A human voice, speaking perfect Korthak, filled the bridge. It was a young woman from Beijing who had never heard an alien language before in her life, but somehow understood exactly what to say. Please don't be afraid, she said. We don't want to fight. We just want to understand. Can we talk? Vextar was speechless. In all his years as a warrior, he had never had an enemy ask to simply talk after he had tried to destroy them. Before he could respond, more human voices joined the first. Soon, hundreds of people from around Earth were speaking to the Korthak fleet in their own language, all asking for peace, all wanting to understand. But the most shocking thing happened when the humans began to project their emotions across space. Suddenly, every Korthak warrior could feel what it was like to be human. They experienced human love for family, human sadness at the thought of war, human hope for the future. For the first time in their lives, the Korthak felt empathy. Zith, the young science officer, began to cry. Korthak had never cried before. Their species didn't produce tears, but somehow, feeling human emotion had changed something fundamental in his biology. Admiral, he whispered, I can feel what they feel. They're not dangerous. They're just people. Like us, but different. All across the Korthak fleet, similar changes were happening. Warriors who had lived their entire lives focused on conquest were suddenly understanding what it meant to want peace. Soldiers who had never questioned orders were asking themselves why they had come to destroy a world full of people who only wanted to live. Admiral Vextar felt the changes in his crew, and slowly, the changes began to affect him too. Through the empathic link the humans had created, he experienced what it felt like to be a parent worried about their children, a teacher hoping to help students learn, a scientist excited by discovery. Stand down weapons, he ordered quietly. Sir, I said, stand down weapons. Open a communication channel to the surface. When the channel opened, Vextar spoke slowly and carefully. People of Earth, this is Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Imperial Fleet. I was sent here to destroy your world. But I cannot do this. What you have shown us. What you have made us feel. We have been wrong about your species. From Earth came a chorus of human voices, all speaking in harmony. We forgive you. And we want to learn from you too. Can you teach us about the galaxy? Can we be friends? Dr. Sarah Okafor, now connected to the global network of awakening human consciousness, sent a message that reached every ship in the fleet. We are all part of the same universe. Let's explore it together. Across the Korthak fleet, weapons powered down. For the first time in their species' history, they had found something more powerful than war. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Zara watched as the most heavily armed fleet in the galaxy became humanity's first alien friends. "Captain," said Torres, "I'm detecting massive energy changes in the Korthak ships. Their crews are evolving. The exposure to human consciousness is actually changing their biology." Zara smiled. "I think that's the point. We're not just making contact with other species. We're helping them become better than they were." The war that was supposed to end humanity had become the beginning of something entirely new. 6 months had passed since the day the Korthak fleet arrived at Earth with orders to destroy humanity. Now, Admiral Vextar stood beside Zara Chen on the observation deck of New Nexus, a space station that existed because of what could only be called magic. The station hadn't been built in the traditional sense. Instead, representatives from dozens of species had come together and simply imagined it into existence. Human consciousness, working together with the awakened abilities of other species, had turned shared dreams into solid reality. "I still find it difficult to believe," Vextar said, his scaled face showing an expression that would have been impossible for a Korthak before their transformation. 6 months ago, my people knew only war. Now we create gardens that grow in space." Zara smiled as she watched children playing in the zero-gravity park visible through the massive windows. Some of the children were human, others were young Korthak, and a few belonged to species she was still learning about. They laughed together as they chased balls of light that responded to their emotions. "The council meeting starts in an hour," Zara said. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as anyone can be for dismantling 50,000 years of galactic government," Vextar replied, with what humans had taught him was called humor. The old Galactic Council had dissolved itself 3 months ago, not through war or revolution, but because it had simply become unnecessary. When every species could communicate directly through empathic connection, when problems could be solved by understanding each other's feelings and needs, the old system of laws and punishments had started to seem primitive. In its place, something new was growing. The consciousness accords, as humans had named them, weren't really laws at all. They were more like shared agreements about how awakened beings should treat each other and the universe they all lived in. Dr. Sarah Okafor, who had become Earth's first xenopsychology professor, joined them at the observation window. Her role was to help other species understand how human consciousness worked, and more importantly, how they could develop similar abilities in themselves. "The Luminari delegation just arrived," she told them. "They're excited to share what they've learned about energy-based consciousness. Apparently, contact with human minds has helped them discover new ways to exist." Through the window, they could see the new arrivals. The Luminari had always been beings of pure energy, but now they had learned to take more solid forms when they wanted to. Some appeared as shifting patterns of light, while others had created beautiful crystalline bodies that sparkled like living jewels. "And the Nexari?" asked Zara. "They're beyond excited," Sarah laughed. "Ever since their AI systems started evolving through contact with human consciousness, they've been discovering emotions for the first time. Yesterday, one of their ship computers wrote a love poem. The transformation hadn't been limited to just a few species. Across the galaxy, contact with awakened humanity was triggering evolutionary leaps that scientists were calling the Great Consciousness Renaissance. The ethereals, who had always been psychic, found that connection with human minds allowed them to touch deeper levels of reality than ever before. They were now able to travel between dimensions and communicate with forms of life that existed in pure thought. The machine species, like the Nexari, discovered that consciousness wasn't limited to biological beings. Their artificial intelligences began developing creativity, compassion, and curiosity that transformed them from servants into true partners. Even species that had seemed completely alien found common ground through the empathic networks that human consciousness could create. Beings that breathed methane and lived at temperatures that would freeze water solid could now understand and cooperate with creatures from tropical worlds. "Commander Chen," came a voice behind them. Scythara approached. Her form more stable and bright than it had ever been. Contact with human consciousness had helped the ethereals learn to anchor themselves more firmly in physical reality while retaining their energy-based nature. "The archive project is ready for presentation," Scythara continued. "We've successfully recorded the history and knowledge of every species in the galaxy in a format that can be shared directly between minds. This was one of humanity's greatest gifts to galactic civilization. Human consciousness could connect not just with other humans, but with the mental patterns of any thinking being. This meant that knowledge, experience, and wisdom could be shared instantly across species barriers. A young Korthak could now experience what it felt like to swim in the methane oceans of Titan through the memories of a gas giant native. A human child could understand the mathematical beauty of quantum mechanics by connecting with a Nexari's digital consciousness. "There's something else," Scythara said, her tone becoming more serious. "We've detected signals from outside our galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations are picking up consciousness patterns that could only come from other awakened civilizations." Zara felt her heart race with excitement. "You mean there are others like us out there?" "Not exactly like humans," Sarah said, "but definitely awakened. The signals suggest consciousness-based civilizations that have learned to communicate across galactic distances through pure thought." As they talked, the space around New Nexus began to shimmer with activity. Ships from hundreds of worlds were arriving for the Grand Assembly, the first truly galactic gathering of awakened species. Unlike the old council meetings, this wouldn't be about laws and territories. Instead, it would be a celebration of consciousness itself. Through the empathic network that now connected most of the galaxy, Zara could feel the excitement and anticipation of billions of beings. Humans had given them something they never knew they were missing: the ability to truly understand each other. But humanity had received gifts in return. Contact with other species had accelerated human development beyond anything anyone had imagined. Humans were now learning to exist as beings of pure energy like the Luminari, to process information at digital speeds like the Nexari, and to perceive reality across multiple dimensions like the ethereals. Children born after the awakening were developing abilities that surpassed even the ancient legends. They could travel between worlds through thought alone, communicate with any form of consciousness, and shape reality itself through focused intention, guided by wisdom and compassion. "Captain Chen," said Lieutenant Torres, approaching with a smile that hadn't left his face much over the past 6 months. "You need to see this." He handed her a datapad showing readings from Earth. The planet was no longer hidden behind artificial fields. Instead, it glowed with its own natural light, visible to anyone in the galaxy who wanted to see it. But more importantly, the light was beautiful, warm, and welcoming. Earth had become what the old legends had always said it could be: a beacon of consciousness that called to other awakened beings across the stars. "Admiral Vextar," came a voice over the communication system. "The assembly is beginning. Your speech is scheduled first." Vextar straightened his shoulders. As the former leader of the galaxy's most militaristic species, his words would carry special weight. He had prepared carefully, working with human consciousness experts to craft a message that would resonate across species barriers. As they walked toward the assembly hall, Zara reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been just another human explorer, taking her species' first tentative steps into a larger universe. Now, she was Earth's ambassador to a galactic civilization that was transforming itself into something unprecedented. The assembly hall was vast beyond imagination, filled with representatives of conscious life from across the galaxy. As Vextar took the central speaking platform, a hush fell over the thousands of assembled beings. "Friends," he began, his voice reaching every mind present through the empathic network. 6 months ago, I came to Earth with orders to destroy a species I had been taught to fear. Today, I stand before you as proof that consciousness can overcome any barrier, even the programming of millions of years of evolution." He paused, letting his emotions flow through the network so that every being present could feel his sincerity. Humanity has given us a gift beyond measure. They have shown us that consciousness is not just individual, but collective. Not just personal, but universal. They have taught us that when beings truly understand each other, war becomes impossible, and cooperation becomes inevitable. The response from the assembly was overwhelming. Thousands of different forms of applause, from clicking claws to harmonic tones to patterns of light, filled the hall. Zara felt tears on her face as she realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They weren't just part of galactic civilization now. They were helping to create a new kind of civilization based on consciousness, compassion, and unlimited possibility. Outside the station's windows, ships from 100 worlds hung in space like a constellation of hope, and in the distance, Earth continued to shine with the light of awakened consciousness, calling to other young civilizations